And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
Well, Jesus died on Friday, and 3 days later, on Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3, he's raised from the dead. He rises from the dead.
In the beginning, God worked for 6 days, creating the heavens and the earth, the seas and all that are in them, and on the 7th day, he rested. And since God did this, you should do this as well. Christians, for some reason, ignore the law and worship on Sundays. What gives? Some have suggested that it's simply switched days, that we no longer observe it on Saturday, but it's still the same Sabbath, just celebrated on Sunday. While seemingly logical, this is not correct. Why don't we observe Saturdays as well then? Are we not breaking God's commandment to keep holy the Sabbath? Some have suggested that the reason we don't is because the law no longer applies, that it has been abolished and so is no longer binding on Christians. This is also not correct. Besides the fact that Jesus famously preached, "I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it," the letter to the Hebrews, written a generation after the birth of the church, continues to assert the importance of the Sabbath. Therefore, a Sabbath rest still remains for the people of God. For this reason, the Catechism of the Catholic Church reminds the faithful that the requirement to keep holy the Sabbath is still very much in effect.
The Sunday then becomes the Lord's Day, because that's the day that the new covenant is completely fulfilled. What do I mean by that? The new relationship that Christ has established with us in the power of the Holy Spirit, in his life, death, and resurrection, that's the day. Sabbath, yes, seventh day, Saturday, but Sabbath also covenant day, Sunday. Does that make sense?
For this reason, groups like the Seventh-day Adventists, who insist on observing a Saturday Sabbath, are not wrong per se, but they do miss something in the process. The Sabbath is not a day as much as it is a person, a reminder of creation that is a weekly observance. If we choose to remember this on Saturday, our focus remains on the first creation. But if we do so on Sunday, the first and 8th day, our focus is on the fulfillment of that creation in Christ.
The lion won't sleep tonight.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. I know this is a unscheduled live, and apologies for the videos not playing like they should. Excuse me. Um, Apologies for the mix-up, but just wanted to do an unscheduled live here, and I'm going to do one. I'm going to try to do another one later on tonight. That's going to be the main live. I know I didn't do a live over the weekend like I would normally do on Saturday night, but I decided to do a live here. Usually I try to stay on top of the different uh, holidays. Some of those different things and get proper teaching, get proper clarity. So I didn't do one on Father's Day. So I decided to do a last minute live, unscheduled live, and we talk about Father's Day. And as you can see, the topic for this lesson is not this Father's Day. In other words, I'm not celebrating this Father's Day. I don't celebrate Father's Day, right? I don't celebrate their Father's Day. Let me make it clearer, be more specific. I honor the true Father's Day. All right, so that's pretty much the thought for today. Honor Father's Day, not this Father's Day. I'll say it one more time. Honor Father's Day, but not this Father's Day. And as you heard in the intro, even though the clips are kind of off a little bit in terms of playing like they should, but you heard some contradictions. There's so many contradictions when it comes to Father's Day in terms of the Shabbat, when it comes to the Roman Catholics, the Christian churches. They have so many lies, so many deceptive teachings trying to justify Sunday service, Sunday worship, and disregard the true Shabbat. Now, real quick, I know that when you study the scriptures, when you go into Leviticus, I believe chapter 2, either chapter 2 or chapter 4, you'll see how the priests are given the responsibilities of keeping the fire burning and never letting the flame go out. In other words, every single day from the first day of the week to Shabbat, the priests kept the sacrifices, kept the altar burning 24/7, 360 days out of the year, not 365, 360 days out of the year. That's the original number of days in the original calendar. So that means that on Shabbat, they were the priests were in place. So that means that you can have a sacrifice going any day of the week, which is true. But the actual Shabbat, the corporate prayer, the corporate day of celebration, is the seventh day of the week. So guess what, family? If a ministry has services every single day and they're honoring Shabbat, they're not in sin. They're not in sin. But if you don't honor Shabbat, you don't have Shabbat service, and you call yourself having services on Sunday or the first day of the week, then you're in error according to scriptures. You're bending, twisting the law, statutes, and commandments. You're in sin. That's a fact. That's according to scriptures. But let's go ahead and get into it. Don't want to do too much talking in terms of commentary. I just want to go straight into the lesson. And feel free, if you have any questions, just put them inside the comment section of the video afterwards, because this is going to be straight to the point, because I want to be prepared for tonight's lesson as well. So let's go to get into it, family. Let's answer this question, or let's give clarity. Not this Father's Day. Like I said, I honor Father's Day, but not this Father's Day, not the man-made Father's Day. I honor the true Father's Day. Doesn't mean because I don't honor or don't celebrate this man-made Father's Day that I disrespect my biological father. Furthest thing from the truth. So let's go ahead and get this in real quick. Let's go ahead and get into this lesson. And family, feel free to share it, take notes, because these are the passages I'm going to share with you will completely shut down anyone that try to justify Father's Day or first day of the week services, but they're not honoring Shabbat. They're not having services on Shabbat. They're not honoring that day. Because again, that is the corporate day of worship for Israel from the very from the time that the Most High gave his law, statutes, and commandments to Israel. But we know that your Shabbat day was a day of celebration even prior to that. But not going to let the cat out the bag. We're just going to walk through it. All right, here we go. Let's get into it. So when is Father's Day? When is Father's Day? When and what day was it created? Did the Messiah honor Father's Day? Let's start with this here. Facts. Father's Day was created in the United States and has its roots in the early 20th century. Sonora Smart Dodd of Spokane, Washington, is credited with founding Father's Day. She was inspired by a Mother's Day sermon in 1909 and wanted to honor her own father, William Jackson Smart, a Civil War veteran and single father who raised 6 children after his wife died. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson issued a proclamation designating the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. So in 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into law as a permanent national holiday in the United States. So this Father's Day that you see many are celebrating, they are celebrating a man-made holiday. So is this the origin of Father's Day? Is this the origin of Father's Day? We know it's not, but want to just ask some questions to get you thinking. Is there a Father's Day celebration in the scriptures? There is a Father's Day celebration in the scriptures. It's called the Shabbat. Let me say that again. There is a Father's Day celebration in the scriptures. It's called the Shabbat. Let's start with Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. It reads, "And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work, which he had made, and he Shabbat, in other words, rested on the seventh day, all his work which he had made." Let me read it one more time. "And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested," of course, Shabbat, "on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had Shabbat, in other words, rested from all his work which Elohim created and made." So we see the Father, Yahweh Elohim, is the one that created the seventh day rest, the Shabbat, the true Father's Day, right? So there's 2 Hebrew words that's transliterated to the word bless, all right? And I'm going to highlight them real quick. So again, there's 2 Hebrew words that's transliterated or, into the word blessed, right? Let's deal with blessed from just dealing with the 119th book of Psalms, verse 1. But this is the word that you'll see there. The ancient Hebrew pronunciation of this word is ashar. And let's see what it means. It means to be straight, to go forward, to be honest, relieve. Let me read it one more time. To be straight, to go forward, be honest, relieve. And let's go to the 119th book of Psalms, verse 1, and just confirm this. And as you see, it reads, "Blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of Yahweh." We see the word blessed here. And truth be told, if we go deeper, do a deeper discovery on the Beatitudes, and that's listed in Matthew chapter 5, you'll understand this is the word blessed that accurately describes or would give you a better understanding of the word blessed, the words that blessed that is used in the Beatitudes, because that entire sermon is actually, it's a message, it's a teaching for the disciples. Yahweh Shah is teaching his disciples. That is a leadership chapter. He's teaching them in the midst of the multitude. But when you read the first couple of verses, it makes it clear that the Messiah is teaching his disciples, letting them know, blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of Yahweh. Because the Messiah did say to his disciples, think not that I come to destroy the law and the prophets. So blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of Yahweh. So an undefiled, right? When you see the word undefiled, the Hebrew word is tham yam or thamayam, and the Israeli is tamim, right? It transliterates to perfect. It transliterates to being unblemished. It transliterates to being unspotted. So an undefiled thamayam person is someone who walk in the manner, darak, of honesty and integrity. Must be straight, ashar, and able to grow, halak yam, and lead. That's what that passage means. But let's go to the other word for blessing. This is the one that you guys are probably more familiar with, the word barak. I'm sure you guys are more familiar with this. So again, when you're reading the scripture, especially when you see this word bless, in other words, make sure you're getting the proper clarity, because not every word you see, again, that inside your Bibles that say blessed has the same Hebrew word that is transliterated from. So here is the one that you guys are familiar with, most of you guys. Barak, it means to kneel, to bless Yahweh, in other words, as an act of adoration. And vice versa, man as a benefit. And we see here it says congratulate. That's one of the key words. So we see to kneel, and then we also see congratulate. But the key here is to bless who? Yahweh. Bless Yahweh. And it says, and vice versa, as a benefit, it says, and man as a benefit. So it's a benefit, it's a blessing for us to honor and celebrate the things that do pleases the Most High, Yahweh. But it goes on to say here, as you see here, kneel. In other words, kneel down, praise, salute, thank. So understand, family, part of blessing someone back in the times of our ancestors, they would take a knee, like you see in the NFL, how they take a knee. They would kneel down and greet one another. That's how, and share their shalom. I know some of you guys would say shalom, but that's how they greeted each other. And I'll touch on that a little bit more. So kneel, in other words, kneel down, praise. We see the word salute and also thanks. So circle salute, circle kneel down, or make a note of this. Right? So these are the words that make up the word barak. You see the first letter, which is the bayath. It means house, family, bloodline. We also see the second letter, which is the ra'ash in the Israeli, resh, which means head, top, rank, beginning. And lastly, we see the ka, which means palm of the hand. So this gives you an idea what it means to bless. This gives you an idea of what it means to do the things that pleases the Most High. Because number one, it's going to cover your entire family, your house, your bloodline. It's also going to what? Show that you understand protocol, that the Father is going to always be number one in our life. Our Father, the Abaya Alahayim, is number one, as we see in the very first letter, Alap. So we see the head with the neck. So this is protocol, that the Father is number one above all. Last, we see the Kop, which means palm of hand. That's what it means to be truly blessed, especially when we start thinking about salutes. So what did Yahweh Shai say about the salute? What did he say about being blessed? Let's touch on that real quick. Matthew chapter 10, verse 11 through 14. And into whatsoever city, this is the Messiah speaking to his disciples, right? And I want to make sure you guys understand this, because they won't, when I say the church is really not going to go into these type of details or understanding that when the Messiah was here walking among us, right? He taught his disciples to go to his own brothers, their own brothers and sisters. In other words, the Israelites. Told them to go to the Israelites. Thus confirming that he did not come, when I say he, the Messiah, did not come with a generic salvation, right? That many teach in the church. And some inside this awakening teach this as well. I'll highlight it real quick. Verse 5, these 12 Jesus sent forth, and these are the 12 right here. These are the 12 right here. And when it says Simon the Canaanite, this is not saying that he is a Canaanite. He's a non-Israelite. But I'll do a special teaching on that. I have a teaching that I taught internally on this, and this is what some would try to use and say, hey, this is Christ had non-Israelites. No, this is the furthest from the truth. All of the disciples were blood descendants of Israel, just like the poor teachings that are taught about Caleb being appointed over Judah to represent Judah as one of the spies. That, hey, Caleb is, and he's from the other nations. That's the furthest thing from the truth. And that's all part of that teaching. I do a special teaching on that just to give you guys proper clarity. But I'm here to tell you there's a lot of lies that are being circulated. And that is one of them. Well, two of them. Caleb being a non-blood descendant of Israel, appointed over all of Judah. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Anyway, so we see here again, it says, these 12 Jesus or Yahweh Shai sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not in the way of the other nations, Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans, enter you not. So the Messiah didn't just send his disciples to everyone. You see how the pattern here, he sent his disciples to Israelites. He told them to go directly to the Israelites. All right. And then look at what it says here. Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Let me zoom that in, because this knocks down the generic passages that you see interpolated into the text of Christ, Yahweh Shai, sending his disciples out just generically. Go to all the world and teach. That's not the proper context of that passage. The Messiah didn't teach them to, all through his walk with them, to focus on their brothers and sisters, Israelites, and then suddenly he give them a generic message. So look at here. But rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Let me read that again. These 12 Yahweh Shai sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not in the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter you not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So I wanted to make sure you guys understand that key point. As I read this, skip down to verse 11. Verse 11, and into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And when ye come into an house, salute it. You'll see that word barak. This is where we get into shalom. Verse 13, and if the house be worthy. Now here it is. Yahushua is teaching his disciples to judge. I know we got a lot of brothers and sisters that'll say, hey, you can't judge me. But you cannot be hypocritical in your judgment. That's what the Messiah taught his disciples. He didn't tell them that they can't judge. He's letting us know we cannot be hypocritical. We can't sit up here trying to tell someone else to be straight and we're crooked. We can't tell someone that they have something in their eye and we got something in our eyes. So look at here. The disciples are being taught how to discern, properly judge the Israelites that they come across. And we can learn a lot from this too, because, sometimes we can be a little too gullible when we're dealing with or interacting with our brothers and sisters in this awakening. There's so many snakes inside this awakening. But because we look at them as being Israelites, we say, hey, you know what? Nah, I'm going to receive you. No, there's a lot of snakes starting with leadership inside this awakening. And here you see here in this passage, Hamashiach is making it clear to his disciples when they go out, make sure they discern, make sure they judge who? Other Israelites, and see if they're what? They are worthy. Look at what it says. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. In other words, when you see peace, this is the word shalom. In other words, it is well, or the wellness. And so that peace that is going to be brought over that house, let me show you what the peace is. Let me go back here. Right? If I could see it here. Some of the verse 8 is not here. But here's the kicker. Here's verse 1. He gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. So that's the peace. That's the authority. That's the power that the Most High through his Son is giving to his disciples. So it says, and if that house, all right, if the house of these Israelites, bloodline Israelites, be worthy, let your peace come upon it. Shalom, make it well. By doing what? The very things that are highlighted in verse 1. Let your peace return to you if it's not be worthy, right here. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. So part of this salute is they will kneel down to greet each other, right? So what happens is, what this is saying is, if they receive you, guess what? You bless that house. You let the peace, your shalom, come upon that house. But if they are not worthy, they reject you, take your peace with you. That's why many of you guys are dealing with stuff. You guys keep closing out in interactions with people that have insulted you. They'll curse you out. They do all kinds of things, insult what your heritage, insult you. And then they have the nerve to say, God bless you. No, the Most High don't salute or approve of that behavior, and neither should you. You take your peace with you. You don't leave your peace with others, especially in this manner that don't approve you, that's insulting you. Anyway, verse 14, and whosoever shall not receive you, look at that. And whosoever shall not receive you. Now, when we go back to verse 13, let your peace come upon it, right? If the house be worthy. But it says, but if that house be not worthy, let your peace return. In other words, don't force it. Don't press it. Don't leave your peace with this people. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when ye depart out of that house, shake the dust off your feet. So when you're kneeling down, like how the NFL does with taking the knee, that's actually the position of how they greeted each other back in the ancient times. So when they would get up off their knee after greeting with their brother, their fellow brethren, then they'll shake the dust off the feet, the top portion of the feet. So this makes it clear, whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when ye depart out of the house of this or city, shake off the dust. Shake off the dust of your feet. take your peace with you. So blessed, Barak, in Hebrew means to kneel down. So in the Greek dictionary definition of salute, look at what it says here. It says here to enfold in the arms. We see here to salute, in other words, to welcome, embrace, greet. All right. So that gives us a proper understanding that when we deal with salute, you're embracing one another. So our brothers and sisters, they would be on one knee and they will what? Embrace each other, saluting each other. So on the seventh day, Shabbath, Yahweh, he knelt down to show his love and respect for his creation by presenting his ordained rest. Now, I know some of you guys may not fully understand this, but I'm going to use this as an analogy for those that are prior military. And you guys are going to understand where I go at with this. In the military, you were taught to salute. That's one of the basic things that you were taught in basic training, how to salute an officer, right? So when you think about that, if an officer salute you and you don't return that salute, you could get in trouble. Or if you salute an officer and they don't return that salute, they can get in trouble. So when you think about a salute, it's out of respect. So the Most High, by kneeling down, he's saluting his creation. He's giving us that what? That shalom, that peace that comes with the territory of Shabbat. So that way the Shabbat is called what? The day of rest, to make sure that things is well. So likewise, at the end of creation, at the conclusion of creation, the Most High looking at his creation and said and confirming that everything is good. That's like the inspections when a soldier goes through inspection in basic training. His drill sergeant, or whomever is the NCOIC over them, right? They would inspect their uniforms. You'll be in formation. And if your uniform is good, no strings hanging out, you don't get any demerits, what the drill sergeant would do then is give you a salute. Once he salutes you, you are supposed to salute him back. That's the importance of the salute. So the Most High gave us an eternal salute. And we're supposed to return that salute back to him. Anyway. So again, and Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. So let's look at the word sanctified. Quadash. That's the Hebrew word, primitive root word, not Kodesh. Quadash. Look what it means. As you see here, Quadash. It's not Kodesh, family. When you say Kodesh, that's Israeli influence. It's Quadash. And you see the source here. Look at how it's being pronounced. All right. Quadash. So clean, consecrate, dedicate, keep, proclaim, purify, sanctify. So when we see keep, that's executing, right? So clean, consecrate, dedicate, keep, proclaim, purify, sanctified. So not only did Yahweh kneel down to show his love and respect for his creation by presenting us the seventh day, in other words, the Shabbat, he also consecrated it. He ordained it. This is the first ordination service you'll see inside the scriptures. This is it right here. But the church has taught us to what? Ignore it. Taught the people how, just ignore it. You don't have to do that anymore. Did Yahweh Shai celebrate and honor the true Father's Day? We're going to answer this question. Did Yahweh Shai, some would say Jesus, this transliterates to Jesus, or some would say Yeshua. But did Yahweh Shai celebrate and honor the true Father's Day? Let's go to Luke chapter 4, verse 15. And he taught in their quahal, in other words, transliterates to synagogue, being kabad, in other words, glorified of all. Key verses, verse 16. So we see that the Messiah is teaching in the assemblies, but he's not teaching on just any old day. He's teaching on, let's look at verse 16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his customs was, Marashar, right? Marashar, Marwashar. I keep messing it up right here. So Marwashar, I don't know why I keep saying Marashar. Mawarasha, right? Little tongue twister here. Some would say Marsha, but Mawarasha, right? Get a little twisted up when I deal with that Y on the Ra'ash. But my apologies for fumbling over it. But again, Mawarasha, right? As his custom, Mawarasha, in other words, heritage was, he went into the temple on the Shabbath, right? That seventh day, and stood up Quam for to read. So we see here on the seventh day, Hamashiach went into the Qahal, in other words, the assemblies. Not I know we got that Greek word synagogue, but actually in the ancient Hebrew it would be called a Qahal, right? That's the assembly. He stood up in the assembly of the Israelites, and it says here, as his customs, Mawar Rasha, was he went into the temple. Went into the synagogue on the Shabbat day and stood up for to read. So this making it clear that the Messiah went into the temple. He went into the assembly on Shabbat. He honored Shabbat, which is the true Father's Day. Can't get around it. But of course, the church, they try to get around it. So not only did Yahushua celebrate and honor the true Father's Day, he also celebrated and honored the other Father's Days, which are called the feast days. That's right. Not only did you have the traditional Father's Day, which is the seventh day Shabbat, but all the feast days, those are Shabbats as well. And Yahushua honored them. And I encourage you guys, I don't think I put the passage here, but go to Leviticus chapter 23. In the first 3 chapters, you'll see that the Most High makes it clear these Shabbats belong to him. So these are also the Father's Day, additional days. So Luke chapter 2, starting at verse 1 and 2, look at what it says. Look at how it reads. And his parents went to Yerushalayim, in other words, Jerusalem, every year at Chag, in other words, feast of the Pasach. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Yerushalayim after their customs, Mararashah of Chag, right? Of the feast days of the Chag. So this is telling us that not only did the Messiah honor Shabbat, he honored all the feast days. His parents honored the feast days. So again, it says, now his parents went to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, at the feast of Pasach, Chag, Pasach, HaPasach, right? And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Yerushalayim after the custom of the feast, Chag. So this is clear that the Messiah honored the feast days, family. He honored Shabbat, and the feast days are Shabbats. Now, if I have time, I'll put the scriptures in here so you guys can have that as reference. So he honored all the Father's days, not just the 7th-day Shabbat, but he honored the feast days as we see here. So did Yahushua and his disciples honor Passover, honor the feast days, honor Shabbat? Yeah, we know that, right? But this is Passover right here, Pasach. We know the disciples rode with Hamashiach on Shabbat as well. So now this was the first day. Now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples, Lamad, came to Yahushua, saying unto him, where wilt thou prepare? Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Pasach, Passover? All right. So verse 18, and he said, go into the city, to such a man and say unto him, Adonai saith, my time is at hand. I will keep, in other words, Shamar, the Pasach at thy house with my disciples. In other words, the Hebrew word is lamad. So did the Apostle Paul honor the Shabbat? So we know the disciples honor Shabbat. We know that the Hamashiach honored Shabbat. But did Apostle Paul honor Shabbat? Did Apostle Paul honor Shabbat? And before I continue, because many would teach that we're no longer under the law and all this other stuff. But listen to what this Catholic priest had to say about that portion of it. Let me pull it up real quick. Let's see what he says about it. Let's see what this particular Catholic priest say. All right, I believe this is it's here. Here we go.
In the beginning, God worked for 6 days, creating the heavens and the earth, the seas and all that are in them, and on the seventh day, he rested. And since God did this, you should do this as well. Christians, for some reason, ignore the law and worship on Sundays. What gives? Some have suggested that it's simply switched days, that we no longer observe it on Saturday, but it's still the same Sabbath, just celebrated on Sunday. While seemingly logical, this is not correct. Why don't we observe Saturdays as well then? Are we not breaking God's commandment to keep holy the Sabbath? Some have suggested that the reason we don't is because the law no longer applies, that it has been abolished and so is no longer binding on Christians. This is also not correct. Besides the fact that Jesus famously preached, "I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it," the letter to the Hebrews, written a generation after the birth of the church, continues to assert the importance of the Sabbath. Therefore, a Sabbath rest still remains for the people of God. For this reason, the Catechism of the Catholic Church reminds the faithful that the requirement to keep holy the Sabbath is still very much in effect.
All right, so you heard the Catholic priest teach that the Shabbat is still in effect. He teaches that and stated that the very passage that many in the church teach to justify saying that we're no longer under the law. That's what they use. We're no longer under the law, so we don't have to honor the law, statutes, and commandments. We don't have to honor Shabbat. We'll get to the contradiction of this particular Catholic priest. And you guys already heard the other Catholic priest that I played earlier. You know, this is what he said when he was trying to do the math. But look at what he say about the Shabbat, the Sunday service.
The Sunday then becomes the Lord's Day because that's the day that the new covenant is completely fulfilled. What do I mean by that? The new relationship that Christ has established with us in the power of the Holy Spirit in his life, death, and resurrection. That's the day. Sabbath, yes, seventh day, Saturday, but Sabbath also covenant day, Sunday. Does that make sense?
It makes absolutely no sense. He acknowledges in the full video, I have it inside the my playlist. He says that, you know, that Shabbat, right? Covenant. He said that's the first covenant. But because of the death, burial, resurrection of the Messiah, the Son, Yahweh Shai, supposedly on the first day of the week, that is a new covenant. And so because of that, that's why they honor Shabbat, they celebrate Sunday service. They have their services on Sunday because the Messiah brought forth a new covenant that's anchored on the eighth day. Now, let me allow you to hear this contradiction at the end by the other Catholic priest. So you even hear within them, they're clashing. But look at what he tried to say on why they select Sunday service versus the true Shabbat.
For this reason, groups like the Seventh-day Adventists, who insist on observing a Saturday Sabbath, are not wrong per se, but they do miss something in the process. The Sabbath is not a day as much as it is a person, a reminder of creation that is a weekly observance. If we choose to remember this on Saturday, our focus remains on the first creation. But if we do so on Sunday, the first and eighth day, our focus is on the fulfillment of that creation in Christ.
You see that, family? Excuse me for cutting it off at the end. I was trying to do some quick edits. So this particular one, he says, he stands firm saying that, hey, the Shabbat is still there. The Most High didn't do away with the Shabbat. But then he turns around and say the reason why they're celebrating first day of the week service is because the eighth day represents a new creation. And therefore, that's why they celebrate and honor and have their services on the eighth day. Come on, family. Those are one of the many lies that you hear about Father's Day, the true Father's Day. Now, let me show you how off these guys are. Let's go to what this first priest was trying to do in trying to squeeze 3 days, right, into a day and a half, trying to justify Friday as being Good Friday and that the Messiah rose early Sunday morning. Listen to it. I'm just going to let you hear his math.
Well, Jesus died on Friday, and 3 days later, on Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3, he's raised from the dead. He rises from the dead.
You hear how he confused himself. He confused his own self. I'll play it one more time. This is when he made it audible, the lies that he's teaching and which others support, the Protestant church supports, he got confused. When he said it out loud, he knows what he's saying. He knows what he's saying is a complete lie. Listen to him.
Well, Jesus died on Friday, and 3 days later, on Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3, he's raised from the dead. He rises from the dead.
You can't make this stuff up, man. Guys, if you use this math in school, when you first learned how to count, would you pass that exam? Would you get the answers right if you use his mechanism on the way he counted? And family, this is what the church celebrates. Both the Christian and Catholic Church, and don't allow these Christians to tell you that they are not under they don't subscribe to Catholicism. They still have all the tenets of the Catholic Church inside the Protestant Church. The Protestant movement, they still embraced the Roman Catholic ways of doing things, no matter how they try to slice and dice it. But let's continue, family. We got plenty more to do here. I don't want to go too long here. All right. So did the Apostle Paul honor Shabbat? Let's go to Acts chapter 18, verse 21. Look at what it reads. Look at what it says. Here it is. But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep Shamar, this feast, Chag, that cometh in Jerusalem, Yara Shalom. But I will return again unto you, if Allahayim will. And he sailed from Ephesus. So this is Apostle Paul pressing to get back to Yara Shalom to honor feast day, which is a Shabbat. So did the early so-called church honor the Passover? Now, family, I'm just using the word for the sake of conversation. We know that they did not use the word church back at that time. All right. All right. I'm going to make it clear. I just kicked someone out of the chat and I banned them, moderators. We're not going to tolerate someone coming in and using profanity. Whether you agree or disagree, if you disagree, show sources. But you are not going to come into this chat using profanity because you disagree with something. And then you expect someone to answer your question. We don't roll like that. We don't roll like that. So take that over to some of the marches that went on. Take that over to some of those things that's going on, the events all around this country. Get it out of here. Don't bring it over here. All right. But anyway, did the early so-called church, which again, That's a 4th century usage, right, by the Roman Catholic Church. But let's just go off this. Let's just use it for the sake of conversation. Did the early church honor Passover? What was the ethnicity of the assembly of Corinth, right? Did they need a blood sacrifice? Oh, I can't stand when my slides do this. My apologies, family. Let me correct this real quick. I'm very, very meticulous when it comes to my slides. I like them to flow a certain way, and it's not flowing the way it should. So let me clear this up real quick. Because I know I'm going to have to pull this out eventually again. So let me just clean it up real quick. All right, let me make sure. Is that it? I think that's it. All right, let me clean this one up. I think that should be it after this one. All right, my apologies, family. That's what I get for putting this slide together at the last minute. All right, because all of this I put together at the very last minute. All right, so let me clean this up real quick so you guys won't see any more of these transitions. Let me make sure that we're good here. All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to answer this question about, let me go back here. Did the early church honor the Passover? What was the ethnicity of the assembly of Corinth? Did they need a blood sacrifice? We're going to answer that question shortly. So Apostle Paul not only honored the Shabbat, which is the true Father's Day, but he taught non-Israelites on the Shabbat at their request. Let's prove it. Acts chapter 18, verse 21. Look at this. And when the Judeans or Judah, Yahwadah, were gone out of the synagogue or out of the Qahal, out of the assembly, the other nations, right? Yours is say Gentiles, right? But the other nations, ethnos is the Greek word that you would see there. The other nations, right? Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them on the next, look at here, Shabbat. So family, it wasn't a struggle for those that were not Israelites to honor Shabbat. If anyone tells you that, they're lying. Why? Because there was a section designated for the other nations, which is referred to as the court of the other nations or court of the Gentiles within the temple. You could confirm this also with Josephus. So it wasn't an issue for the non-blood descendants of Israel, the Israelites, right? I mean, the other nations who were not blood related to the Israelites. It wasn't they did not struggle with honoring Shabbat because they understood that this is, in order to honor the Shabbat, they had to what? Do certain things. In order to have a relationship with the Most High or Yahweh, they had to what? Honor Shabbat. That was one of the things that he placed a point of emphasis on. So as you see here, the other nations, as Paul was teaching, right after Paul taught, they came to him asking him to teach them. Look at here, verse 43. Now, when the congregation was broken up by many of Yahwadah, yours to say Jews, but anyway, Yahwadah, Judah, Judeans, and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of Yahweh. So here it is. The congregation was broken up, right? After they departed. It says here, religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas. In other words, there was people from other nations. They followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of Yahweh. Verse 44, and the next Shabbat day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of Yahweh. So it says on the next Shabbat, those people that heard the word, heard what Paul was teaching, that was not descendants of Israel, right? They pressed. Of course, we know that Israelites were there because that's part of our culture, right? But the other nations, they pressed. They pressed. So they came to Paul on Shabbat to ask Paul to teach them on the Shabbat. So the next Shabbat, guess what? They got taught. So they were not, I'll say it again, they were not struggling to honor Shabbat. That's a fact. And if you want to be fair, truthful about it, which we've been truthful, they didn't struggle. The ones that truly want to have a relationship with the Most High, Yahweh, Acts chapter 2 makes it clear that there were some that was coming out to honor feast days. Because you'll see proselytes that was out there hearing the disciples along with the other 120 total people speaking in other languages. So honoring the Shabbat was not a struggle for those that were not blood related to the Israelites. So not only did Apostle Paul honor the Shabbat, but also as a token of unity to prove that he was not teaching against honoring the commandments, which includes the Shabbat, right? He let me correct this here. Apostle Paul did something here to show and prove that he was not teaching against the commandments. So let me correct this slide real quick because I see Shabbat here twice. It should not be there. Might as well correct it as I progress here. All right. That's how it's supposed to read. So let's confirm this. So not only did Apostle Paul honor Shabbat, but also as a token of unity to prove that he was not teaching against honoring the Shabbat, honoring all the commandments of Yahweh, which includes Shabbats, includes the feast days. All right. Acts chapter 18, starting at verse 24. Actually, Acts chapter 21. I got to correct that slide, man. Got some errors here. Blame Sister Carol for that. All right. Starting at verse 24. Them take and purify thyself with them and be at charges with them that they may shave their heads. So we're dealing with a purification, right? Paul, who was was confronted, saying, "Hey, man, we're hearing that you're teaching that you don't that you don't have to honor the law, statutes, and commandments. That you're disregarding, like many would say, the law of Moses. We have concerns here, and Paul is making it clear that he's not teaching against the law, statutes, and commandments, and he went even further to prove that he wasn't teaching against it. I'm going to show you, reveal that to you here in these passages. It says, them take and purify thyself with them and be at charges with them that they may shave their heads and all may know that those things thereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing. In other words, saying, do these things. And since you said you're not teaching against the law, statutes, and commandments, all right, let's have a corporate public thing that you do, just so that way the people understand that not only these are rumors, these rumors are lies, these things that are being spread that are complete slanders. He said, now go to the temple and purify yourself with some of the others. So it goes on to say here, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. So you already had candidates, more than likely the Nazirite vow is what they're honoring. That's Numbers chapter 6. And it says, and be at charges with them that they may shave their heads. So they said to Paul, don't just say that you're not doing this, but we want you to put the actions behind it. So that way the people can confirm that you are keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. That's why it says here, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. Verse 24, as touching the Gentiles or ethnos, the other nations, which believe we have written, and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangled, and from fornication. Verse 26, then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself with them, entering into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them. So Paul, in agreement, he participated in this purification, which means Paul had his hair shaved. Then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself with them, into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them. That's blood sacrifices, right? The sacrifices were still going on during Apostle Paul's time, in which, guess what? A sacrifice was offered for him, an animal sacrifice. But nevertheless, this is what Paul did to show and prove that he was not teaching against the law, statutes, and commandments. So let's go back to this question. Did the early so-called church honor the Passover? What was the ethnicity of the assembly of Corinth? Well, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. This is Apostle Paul teaching. Verse 7, purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Mashiach, our Passover or Pasach, is sacrificed for us. Wait a minute. Paul is teaching the assembly of Corinth? The Passover? No, Pastor, no. Yeah, he just teaching, it's a spiritual thing. No, he's not teaching them the literal Passover. No, Pastor. No, he ain't teaching that. He's just teaching the lesson. He's not teaching them to honor Shabbat. No. You're going to have to go a little deeper. Go a little deeper, Pastor. Okay, I will. Verse 8. Therefore, let us keep the what? Wait a minute. They weren't just doing lip service. Paul is telling them, let us keep the feast. Shamar, the feast, Chag, not with old leaven. Now he's getting into what? The feast of the unleavened bread portion of it. Not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice. I said mice, Not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. That's where you get the word tamayam or tamim. So Paul is telling them, wait a minute. He's telling them you have to have a change of heart. Don't just go through the formalities, but you got to change your heart. Wait a minute. That's Jeremiah, right? Now we get into what? The renewed covenant, right? That the Most High will place his instructions into the heart of his people, right? That's what it's saying right here. Therefore, let us keep Shamar, the feast, Chag, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. But the key here, no blood sacrifices. They said Yahweh Shai, he is what? He was the blood sacrifice. So they don't have to do the blood sacrifice. Paul is teaching them, don't worry about the blood sacrifices. Because guess what? Yahweh Shai, as you honoring Passover, he is our Passover lamb. And he didn't just stop right there. He says, therefore, let us. He didn't say, let me. He said, let us honor the feast. Come on, family. It's right here. It's right here. The true Father's Day. So let's get a definition of the true Father's Day, the Shabbat. Let's see what it means. It says desist, cease, celebrate, keep. In other words, Shabbat. Rest, still. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me Shabbat also means celebrate? So let's put this in this proper perspective. Going back to what I said earlier, the 7th-day Shabbat is a corporate worship. You can worship any day of the week as individuals, but for all of Israel, the Most High saying, hey, do whatever you have to do from the 1st day to the 6th day. That's your time. Whatever you do. But when you enter into those gates with thanksgiving in Thanksgiving, right? When you come into those courts, into that court of praise, he wants your mind, your will, and your emotions to be in sync with him. He don't not, do you know that you shouldn't even be in the presence of the Most High saying you honoring Shabbat and you worried about your light bills, you worried about your children, you worried about someone talking about you, you worried about all these different things. The Most High said, hey, you had the first day to the sixth day to deal with all that stuff. But when you come into the presence, cast down all those imaginations and give him his undivided attention and celebrate it. So where it says desist, cease from all that stuff you were dealing with from the first day of the week to Friday, from Sunday to Friday. Hey, you had all that opportunity to sort that stuff out, but when you get into the Shabbat, when you come into that Shabbat rest, this is how you start reprogramming yourselves. When you get into the place of your assemblies that you worship at, leave whatever you have outside that door. Leave it on the sixth day, because the seventh day that belongs to the Most High. The Scripture says He inhabits the praises of His people. So guess what? If you're in the sanctuary and all you thinking about is your problem, guess what? You're not even honoring the Shabbat, because you're supposed to cease from those problems, because you understand that the Most High is greater than any situation. He's greater than any problem. And if you want Him to enter in and do away with that problem, just praise Him, just celebrate Him. That's what Shabbat means. That's how we get into His presence. That's the true way of honoring Shabbat. So we see here, celebrate. Cease, but celebrate. Come on, family. Come on, family. Now, this is just breaking out each letter just to show how instrumental the Shabbat is. The first letter, the Shah, Baya, the Ba, Bayath, the last letter, Tha. And why are these important? Because each letter is going to teach you, give you even more understanding of how important the Shabbat is. Because the Shabbat is what? A tool that the Most High has created for us, right? The Bayath, which is the bloodline, house, family, could be a physical structure, but for the most part, what we're dealing with is bloodline. Then we see sign, mark, evidence. Sign, mark, evidence. Tha. That's the importance of the Shabbat. So the Shabbat is a tool in preserving our household, right? And preserving our bloodline. Preserving our household, preserving our bloodline. It's the key. Now, let me just give you a little history. Princeton University map. You guys know this map here, Negro land. And one thing that stood out about this is the territory of Guinea, which this is considered the areas of Sudan, right, in which the current administration wants to ban, right? But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But what stood out about this map is this right here. Not just Ouida, but also this writing here. I'm incredibly informed that a country about 100 leagues north of the coast of Guinea is inhabited by white men, or at least a different kind of people from the blacks who wear clothes and have a use of letters, make silk, and some of them keep the Christian Shabbat. So a couple of things that stood out here is it says that they keep in the Christian Shabbat. No, family, they were honoring Shabbat, not some Christian Shabbat. But then also when it says white men, what they're saying is that they came across a group of people that their features were not like some of the other tribes, some of the other people that they've come in contact with. Some can have wide noses or thicker lips, whatever the case may be. But he's saying these group that he came across, and I'm going to show you who they are, that they're still dark skinned, they still dark melanated people, but their nose, their eyes were a little different. That's what this is really saying here. But let's give clarity here. All right. Do I want to go here? I'm not going to go into it. I don't want to get into all this. I thought I took this out. Right. So did the Portuguese discover a different kind of white man? Right. Did they discover a different kind of white man? Let me take that slide out. I didn't want to have that slide there, so I won't forget. All right. So did the Portuguese discover a different kind of white man who actually wore clothes and can write? Right. Why would the Portuguese be surprised at finding a civilized group of white men? Let's give clarity to what's actually on that map. Just what I pointed out. Africa and its inhabitants, right? But it says here on page 173, Saracos, in other words, Sonic people, the Jews of West Africa, but unlike them, are chiefly wholesale dealers carrying on a large caravan trade between Sierra Leone and Timbuktu. These are some of the people that they're referring to. These are who they're referring to. Let me zoom in real quick. Come on, family. These are the people that they're referring to. This is our brothers and sisters here. So they're saying in that map that their eyes are a little different. They know that their facial features are a little different. But here's the kicker. Page 207. Actually, let's skip over to page 410. It says, a part of the local trade is in the hands of the Mavumbas, a people of grave and solemn aspect with intelligent eyes, straight or aquiline nose, whose pronounced Semitic type has earned them the Portuguese designation of Judeos-Preton, or Black Jews. And it goes on to say they may certainly be regarded as of Jewish origin if the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Shabbat, abstaining even from all conversations on that day. See, family, you don't see anything saying that they was honoring the Christian Shabbat because the Christian Shabbat is Sunday. No, these guys are honoring the 7th-day Shabbat. And so this gives you more clarity when it talks about a different kind of white man, right? What they were actually referring to was Negroes who look, as you see here, intelligent eyes. In other words, the eyes were a little different, right? Aquiline nose. In other words, their nose is not as wide as, some of the other people they come across. So that's what this is saying here. It's describing their facial features. They're still dark melanated people, but they just don't look like some of the others that they come in contact with. That's what this is saying. All right. But the key here that I really want to highlight, because they said they may certainly be regarded as Jewish origin if the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Shabbat, abstaining even from all conversations on that day. So we get in clarity that there were people, some of our ancestors were honoring the Shabbat. And this actually gave you a proper understanding of the writings on that map, even though some of it is deceptive, especially when you get to that Christian Shabbat nonsense. So are non-blood descendants of Israel required to honor the Father's Day, the true Father's Day, the Shabbat? Well, let's go to Isaiah 56, verse 6. Because the way that the church teach, the way that they teach it, as if there's two laws. Some would even be deceptive, saying, no, Israel still have to honor those things, but the church don't. Yeah, I got another video I'm going to drop. I got some videos I'm trying to get back on on my grind again. But it's a couple of things I got to really deal with, like this so-called church age. Getting into all that dispensational nonsense that many call themselves teaching prophecy are pushing. We'll get to that. But anyway, Isaiah 56, verse 6. Also the sons of strangers that join themselves to Yahweh, to serve him and to love the name of Yahweh, to be his servants, abad yam, everyone that keepeth shamar, the Shabbat, from polluting, kalal, it, and take hold of my covenant. Barayath. So let me read it again. Also the sons of the strangers that join themselves to Yahweh, to serve him, to love the name of Yahweh. In other words, name Sham, the reputation of Yahweh. His name means he exists, to be his servants. Everyone that keepeth the Shabbat from polluting it and take hold of my covenant. So when you put this into its proper perspective, right, because we see Shabbat, but then we see covenant. So these are actually, when you see Shabbat here, it's referring to the feast days, right? Because we know the 7th-day Shabbat is in the 10 Commandments. And we know the 10 Commandments are the words of the covenant. So this is saying, in a nutshell, paraphrasing, everyone, these other nations that want to have a relationship with Yahweh, everyone that keep, in other words, execute. That's what Shamar also means, execute. The Shabbats, in other words, the feast days, from polluting, kalal it, and take hold of my covenant, which are the what? 10 Commandments. And within the 10 Commandments is the what? 7th-day Shabbat. And this is the Tanakh transliteration of the same verse. As for the foreigners who attach themselves to Yahweh, to minister to him, and to love the name Sham of Yahweh, to be his servants, all who keep the Shabbat and do not profane it, and who hold fast my covenant. It's just that simple, family. But that Catholic preach, the first one I played, tried to say that, hey, you know, the covenant, the first covenant, the Shabbat is associated with that. But through the Messiah's death, burial, and resurrection, that's entering to a new covenant. The 8th day, right? The definition one said the new covenant, while the other one said creation, an 8th-day creation, a new creation. Crazy family, crazy people. Can't make this stuff up. People embrace this stuff. All right. That's just what I have here. I got to take that out, duplicate slide. So non-blood descendants of Israel have made assertive efforts to profane the Shabbat. Let me make this clear, family. For those that are watching, you may not know, may not be familiar. Yes, the Greeks, the Romans, and others have made efforts. They have made assertive efforts to completely remove the Shabbat. They didn't want the Shabbat to be associated with Israel. They didn't even want to be associated with it. They tried to change it. But let's prove this, right? This is what you won't hear or see them touch on in the church, because they now the church teach to stay away from the Apocrypha. They got all kinds of bogus scenarios on why they don't accept it. I did a teaching on this. I can't remember what the title of the lesson, but I believe it's in the foundational playlist, but showing the lies, the deception of them not accepting the Apocrypha, right? So this is coming from one of the books, the first Maccabees, starting at chapter 1, verse 43. Look at what it says about what these guys were doing, right? This is the period before Hamashiach came. Right. So this is like the period of the Maccabees. Right. And this is what what's his name? I believe his name is Antiochus. Right. Antiochus, who was who was basically a Greek pawn. Right. Antiochus. Right. They were pushing the Greek culture, trying to force it on the Israelites. So this is what First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 43 records. It says, now when you open up, when you start up in the early part of this, they also talks about how they were trying to put images of themselves inside the scriptures. Not just pictures, because when you think of images, you're going to think of pictures, but changing words to suggest that, to make it seem like it's the Greeks, right? That the Israelites' writings is closer to the Greek writings, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So verse 44, for the king, did I put verse 43 here? Nope. I don't know why I didn't put verse 43, but anyway, this is for verse 43. I'll read it right now, and then we'll read verse 44 real quick. All the Gentiles, in other words, other nations, accepted the command of the king. Matter of fact, let's start at verse 41. Then the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. This is going to sound familiar, right? Like the Roman Catholic Church. Also sound like the Spanish Inquisition. Then the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one nation, and that all should give up their particular customs. All the Gentiles accepted the command of the king. Many, even from Israel, gladly adopted his religion. They sacrificed to idols and profane the Shabbat. All right. So that's getting to first verse 44 right here now. For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Yarashalam in the cities of Yahweh Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. In other words, the foreign laws. When you see strange, foreigner, right? They're Baal. They're saying these strange laws. They're saying that Israel should embrace these strange laws, starting at the capital, Yarashalam, which is Jerusalem. And forbid them, and look at what it says, and forbid burnt offerings, sacrifice, drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Shabbats. In other words, and it says in festival days. So this is dealing with the feast days and the 7-day Shabbat, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. This is when it says trying to pollute the holy people, this goes back to the playbook of Balaam. Remember, Balaam, that was his whole goal. He wanted to curse Israel by way of the request of the king of the Moabites. And then Most High Yahweh checked him, told him not to do it. But then he came up with another scheme, is what? Introducing the men to Moabite women, seduce them that way. So that way he can, in the Most High's eyes, the people are polluted, and then he would disown us. But here you see Shabbats, feast days. Look at this here. It says, forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings. So this is telling them to also eat, disregard the circumcision, eat pork, shrimp, all the stuff that the Most High says is forbidden. So that's the playbook for the Spanish Inquisition. We won't hear that in the church. That's why they don't want this information to be taught in the church, because if people had this inside their scriptures, some of them will be asking questions. It'll literally undermine that what's going on, the entire doctrine of the church. But then also, truth be told, some of these are included in the Catholic Bible. So this tells you that they don't read it. You know what I mean? Because if the people really read it for what's there, they'll see the lies. Anyway, let's wrap this up, family. Genesis 3:15. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed, Zerah and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this is pretty much just saying, I'm fast forwarding here, pretty much wound and all that is saying basically make some modifications, subtle changes, do all kinds of things of changing the word to where as though it throws you off. Matter of fact, let me go back. I don't want to brush over that word. Bruise, it says wound, injure. And then it says to inflict psychological hurt on. So we've been psychologically hurt as a people because we were taught the scriptures, law, statutes, and commandments completely incorrect. We were taught to embrace a religious system that don't like us, that hate us, that have enslaved us. All the Abrahamic faiths, so-called religions have enslaved us. All the Abrahamic faiths have what? Treated us as if we were less than human. All of the Abrahamic faiths know that we are the people of the book. All the Abrahamic faiths have their modifications that they have done and interpolated the text to justify their position on how they treat us and taking an identity that never belonged to them. So therefore, they put subtle things inside the scriptures in their transliterations. You'll see Lord all the time versus saying Yahweh. You'll see God, right? Instead of saying Elohim, you'll see the transliterated name Jesus that's based off of the Greek transliteration, but not Joshua for the name of the Messiah, which is more of an accurate transliteration that comes straight from the Hebrew. This is all part of their game. This is all part of their plan to what? Inflict psychological hurt on us by creating a slave Bible, right? To take out all the passages they thought that would prevent us from seeing that we should not be treated the way that we are treated. But even in the miraculous thing of Nat Turner was able to read what they have, a scaled down, watered down Bible that was made so that way, or written in a way to keep us enslaved. He was still able to see the truth beyond all of that. But he still saw the psychological damages that it had done to our people, because who gave them up? So nevertheless, let's get over to here. Exodus chapter 20. It says here, remember the Shabbat day to keep it holy. Out of all the commandments, out of all 10 commandments, we see that the word remember is every time the commandments are spoken or taught, you see the point of emphasis is always with the Shabbat day, because that's the one day. That's the one day you see that other people want to what? Profane. That's the one day. Look at this so-called Christian Catholic Church. Remember, Zakawar or Zakar, that's, trunk down if you want to include, the wa, right? That ah sound, but actually the ancient Hebrew, Zakawar, the Shabbat day to keep it holy, Quadash. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, right? The fourth commandment is the only commandment that begins with remember. The fourth commandment is the only commandment that is described as a sign. Let's prove it. Let's prove it. This is Zakar or Zakawar, as we saw in the ancient Hebrew. It says to remember, be mindful, recount, remember, make, or look at here, make to be remembered. We have to be made to remember this right here, right? It says here, bring to, call to remembrance, like bring to remembrance, call to remembrance, come into remembrance, keep in remembrance, put to or put in remembrance. We see here to be brought to remembrance. So this is making it clear that we need to, by any means, remember the Shabbat, placing the point of emphasis on here. So let's prove that the Shabbat is a sign. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, my Shabbats, right? The ancient Hebrew, you'll see Shabbath wath, right? Because now we're dealing with the plural. And when you see this plural, we know that this is not just dealing with the 7-day Shabbat, the traditional Shabbat. This is dealing with the feast days. Speak thou also to the children of Israel, saying, verily my Shabbat wath ye shall keep, shamar, in other words, execute, for it is a sign, a wath, between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahweh that doeth sanctify you. So let's go back here. Oh, sorry about that. So we see the Shabbats we are supposed to keep, and that they are what? Signs. The Shabbat is a sign. So when we go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, I'm bringing this out for a reason. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that he is as Yahweh, sitteth in the temple of Yahweh, showing himself that he is Yahweh. Doesn't that sound familiar? So the Shabbat is a sign, but guess what? The church teach against the sign. They came up with some fake signs like the Sunday resurrection, like Good Friday. Nothing is good about Friday. Nothing is good about their resurrection Sunday, because it's lies. They are anti-Yahweh. They are anti-law, statutes, and commandments. And now they're what? Coming up with their own signs. That's their signs. Come on, family. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. So this is why I'm showing this, because we have the Shabbat that I shared with you with scripture saying that the Shabbat is a sign. And if you read the entire passage, you really go even deeper with that, right? But look at here, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worship, so that he as Yahweh sitteth in the temple of Yahweh, showing himself that he is Yahweh. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things, and now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. This is the key, verse 7. For the mystery of iniquity, in other words, bending, twisting the law, statutes, and commandments. That's what iniquity means. For the mystery, musteos, right? But the key is iniquity. Anamia, which means bending, twisting the law. Doeth already work. Only he who now letting will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall be that wicked be revealed, whom Adonai shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and he shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working, look at this, after the working of Satan, Hashatan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Make a note of that, lying wonders. Lying wonders. What is the lying wonder? Starting with the Shabbat. So they have to rewrite scriptures. They have to come up with all these commentaries, create their own universities, create all these different things to push their deception. All of these religions has done that. So the signs and lying wonders, it said that they're going to be in what? The temples, right? Verse 3, remember verse 3, they're going to be in the temple. They're going to show themselves as being a deity. That's what they're doing right now, right? That's what these Catholic priests, these Christian priests, Islam, we go right down the list, Judaism, all of that. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness, in other words, being unlawful, not following the law, statutes, and commandments, and them that perish because they receive not the love of the truth. Look at that. Because they received not the love of the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. So because they don't want to hear the truth, they want to dig deeper into their lies. They want to dig deeper into their deceptions. That's why you're hearing these two Catholic priests say two different things, but the thing that they agree on is that they are not honoring Shabbat. They made up their own days, something that Hamashiach didn't honor. They made up their own days that the Messiah never pushed. But the Messiah honored Father's Day. I know a lot of people would say when I grew up in the church, they say, what would Jesus do? I know that Christ, the Hamashiach of the scriptures, wouldn't be honoring this feast day. Honoring this, you call it feast day, this so-called Father's Day today. He would be casting it down, just like Apostle Paul would, just like all the disciples would. So who's coming after the working of Satan, Hashatan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. So why do most churches have services on Sunday? Let's show the lying wonders, right? Who changed the Shabbat? Who created Good Friday? All of this is Constantine. Come on, family. Constantine created this. I'll just go here, right? This the edict, the law, the civil sanction of the observance of Sunday and other festivals of the church. So it's making it clear that, hey, he's the source, not just of Sunday observance, but of the festivals of the church, right? Sound like that Dawson got church. The state indeed should not and cannot enforce the observance upon anyone, but may undoubtedly and should prohibit the public disturbance and profanation of the Christian Sabbath, right? Which they talk about Sunday, and protect the Christians in their right and duties of proper observance. Constantine in 321 forbade the sitting of courts and all secular labor in the towns. All right. So let's fast forward. What it says it at once to the sun god Apollo and to Christ, the true son of righteous. So it's saying for those Roman Catholics that still want to worship their sun god on Apollo, he made it easier. By what? Coming up with a generic day so that way both sides can be happy. His Roman Catholics who don't want to worship their Greek deities, that they can still have a equal, a middle ground, so to speak. Crazy, right? But let's see here. Good Friday, right? Look at this here. And at the same time enjoying the observance of Friday in memory of the death of Christ. So we see that Constantine created Sunday worship, and we also see that he created Good Friday. So this is why this Catholic priest is confused. Listen to him.
Well, Jesus died on Friday, and 3 days later, on Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3, he's raised from the dead. He rises from the dead.
Forked tongue, right? Forked tongue ministries. Fork tongue ministries. And that's why this other one sound like what he try to sound authoritative, but he still made up some stuff here.
For this reason, groups like the Seventh-day Adventists, who insist on observing a Saturday Sabbath, are not wrong per se, but they do miss something in the process. The Sabbath is not a day as much as it is a person, a reminder of creation that is a weekly observance. If we choose to remember this on Saturday, our focus remains on the first creation. But if we do so on Sunday, the first and eighth day, our focus is on the fulfillment of that creation in Christ.
So as you can see, family, they're making stuff up. So now you got a first creation, right? Which we always know was the first creation, which is, that's why you said the first and the eighth day, because the first day, when creation began. But the reason why you say the eighth day is because of justifying the Messiah, right? Sunday worship. By lying, making up stuff, saying that the Messiah rose on the eighth day. And what do we see here? The sign of the Shabbat. Messiah was raised from the dead on the Shabbat, the seventh day of the week. But as you can see, these guys rewriting history, trying to rewrite scripture. Right? So let's fast forward. I don't want to get into all of this. Let me see if I got one last point I want to. I'm not going to get into all of this, family, because I didn't want to be too long. These next set of sources, this is dealing with how the Roman Catholic Church is calling out the Protestant church, making it clear that they know that the true Shabbat is the seventh day, and that the Catholic Church, that instead of going against it, they fell in line. Matter of fact, I'll go to that one source because I don't want to read all of this. Let me go to that one source. Let's see here, because the Catholic Church, man, they made it clear that the Protestant churches fell in line. Yeah, this is the source right here. I'll go here. I'll read this source here. And I encourage you guys, this is a great source right here. Abram Herbert Lewis as Dr. Divinity. But we see here the Sabbath question from the Roman Catholic standpoint, as stated by the Catholic Mirror, together with introduction and remarks, 1894, page 34 and 35. Let's just touch on this real quick. The Protestant world at its birth found the Christian Sabbath too strongly entrenched to run counter to its existence. So this is saying that the Protestant church, this is when we start dealing with the Reformation movement and all that, they went against the church, right? That's where you start getting into now I can't think of some of their names right now. But anyway, I ain't going to try to remember it right now. But it says that the Protestant church, the Protestant world, at its birth found that Christian Sabbath too strongly entrenched to run counter to its existence. So what they're saying is, as they began to, Martin Luther, as they began to establish themselves, the Protestant movement, right? They want to separate themselves from the church. What he's saying is they know the truth about the Shabbat, but because the Catholic Church, their Christian Sabbath doctrine was too strong, it was so entrenched that people was, so dependent on this with all the rituals that they created and all that, that just like the Matrix, the people were not going to come off of this. So it says here, it said that it was too hard for them to try to counter it, to come out with the truth. So look at what it goes on to say. It was therefore placed under the necessity of acquiescing it in the arrangements, thus implying the church's right to change the day. For over 300 years, the Christian Sabbath is therefore to this day the acknowledged offspring of the Catholic Church. So they're making it clear that the way that the church, the Protestant church, all these different denominations, all these come from Roman Catholics, saying that what you see them doing today comes straight from them. They're saying that they are the source. They are the originators. And all of what you see is in the Protestant church come from them. Look at the regalia. They wear the Catholic regalia. Look at the bishops. Look at the man. I could go right down the list. So it's saying again, let's read this real quick. The Christian Sabbath is therefore to this day the acknowledged offspring of the Catholic Church as spouse of the Holy Ghost. Without a word of remonstrance from the Protestant world, let us now, however, take a glance at our second proposition. The Bible alone as the teacher and guide in faith and morals. This teacher most emphatically forbids any change in the day for paramount reasons. So now they are going in, they're making it clear, right? This theologian, this Roman Catholic theologian is making it clear that in the scriptures, there's not a single passage that justified changing this day. And it took it a step further, said this teaching, in the scriptures, most emphatically forbids any change in the day for paramount reasons. So it's saying that the scriptures not only that you will not find a single passage about some Sunday worship or Sunday Shabbat, but it says that the scriptures teach emphatically that you are not to change, bend, twist, change, move this day by any means. So the command calls for a perpetual covenant, because guess what? It is a perpetual covenant. When you read Exodus 31, when you read Exodus 34, you see that it is a perpetual covenant. So when you hear these guys, I'm refraining. I was about to say a name. I'm not going to even say it. But these guys, when you hear them come up with all kinds of reasoning by saying that let's start with this guy right here. Let's go back to this guy right here who couldn't get his math straight.
The Sunday then becomes the Lord's Day because that's the day that the new covenant is completely fulfilled. What do I mean by that? The new relationship that Christ has established with us in the power of the Holy Spirit in his life, death, and resurrection. That's the day. Sabbath, yes, seventh day, Saturday, but Sabbath also covenant day, Sunday. Does that make sense?
You hear that? So this is why, family, that phrase new covenant, that is a charm. That is what everything is being swept under. We're under a new covenant. Guess what? It's not a new covenant. It's a renewed covenant. It's a refreshed covenant. Not new. When you see the word chadash, look it up. It'll tell you exactly what that word means. It means to make anew. It means to renew. It doesn't mean to completely make something up. If the Most High came up with a completely new covenant, then he broke his original covenant to Abraham. I hope y'all grab hold of that. It's a renewing of the covenant. So that's how this deception is pushed. That word new. Because if you see something new, you automatically attach the word old. If you see New Testament, New Covenant, oh, that stuff that's in the law of the prophets, that's old. That's how you push charms and witchcraft. All right. So this is making it clear. The Protestant movement, they know. They know. They know. They know, family. And the Protestant leaders know as well. So the day look at here. I'm gonna read it real quick again. This day most emphatically forbids any changes in the day for paramount reasons. The command calls for a perpetual covenant. The day commanded to be kept by the teacher has never once been kept, thereby developing an apostasy from an assumedly fixed principle as self-contradictory and So now they're saying, look at it. The day commanded to be kept by the teacher, the scriptures, has never once been kept. So they're saying these guys ain't never keep the Shabbat. They never tried to keep the Shabbat. That's what he's saying here. That's what he's saying here. That's what he's saying here. Consequently, as suicidal as it is within the power of language to express, nor are the limits of demoralizing yet reached. Far from it. Their pretense for leaving the bosom of the Catholic Church was for apostasy. So this is calling them out saying, hey, wait a minute. They're saying that, hold on one second, guys. Let me hit mute real quick. Let me say something to my daughter. All right. So it says here, nor are the limits of demoralization yet reached. Far from it. Their pretense, that's right, pretending, calling them pretenders, pretending for leaving the bosom of the Catholic Church was for apostasy, saying, hey, the reason why the Protestant movement, one of their major tenets, one of their major arguments for leaving the Catholic Church was because they were saying that the Catholic Church was teaching incorrectly. They had fallen and all this other stuff. So their pretense for leaving the bosom of the Catholic Church was for apostasy from the truth as taught in the written word, saying that the Protestant movement is supposed to be going off the solely off the written word. So they saying that the Catholic Church is not staying focused on the word. So they got to leave the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church is not teaching the word. And guess what they did? They fell right in line with the Catholic Church. Look at this. This is what this is saying. They pretense for leaving the bosom of the Catholic Church was for apostasy from the truth as taught in the written word. So they said, hey, the Catholic Church they're not following the word. They adopted the written word as their sole teacher, which they had no sooner done than they abandoned it promptly, as these articles have abundantly proved it. So it's saying they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna get back to the law, statutes, and commandments. We're gonna do exactly what the word says do." And it says, no sooner than they abandoned it, they quickly did an about face. Doesn't that sound like many of our brothers and sisters inside this awakening? Many came into this saying they're going to honor the law, statutes, and commandments, and when they got to really see what the word really says, guess what? And they couldn't handle the pressure of staying the course. What did they do? They did an abrupt bow face and went right back to where they came. That's exactly what the Catholic Church is saying the Protestant movement did. They did all this talk about being strictly following the word, and soon as they left, they immediately abandoned their position and came right back, start holding on to the same things that the Catholic Church has been teaching. Look at this. And by a perversity as willful as erroneous, they accepted the teaching of the Catholic Christian Church in direct opposition to the plain, unvaried, and constant teaching of their sole teacher in the most essential doctrine of their religion. So it said they, instead of just following the scriptures, what the scripture says, they said, you know what, we're going to just go ahead and roll with the Catholic Church. Doesn't that sound familiar, family? Come on, family. Still happening right now, even in this awakening. So that's what this is. This source is calling out here. And this source right here, not going to get into it, further proves that they changed the Shabbat. They, the Roman Catholic Church, and of course the Protestant movement, they did the same thing, following the Catholics' leeway. So we're going to stop right here, family. Went longer than what I anticipated on going. I'm going to stop right here because I was going to try to do another live tonight. If not, I may have to hold that off till tomorrow night or this Thursday. But nevertheless, family, not this Father's Day is our lesson. Not this Father's Day, right? Father's Day. I honor Father's Day. I celebrate Father's Day, but not this Father's Day that many are celebrating, right? So with that being said, family, really appreciate you guys for coming into the live here. I know it's an untimely live, unscheduled live. I know some may be out there celebrating Father's Day anyway. Let me stop that. All right. But with that being said, drop your, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or post it inside the comment section. Appreciate it, moderators, for holding it down in the chat. With that being said, in the words of Yahweh that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, they will not have the power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you, but we have to hold our peace. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel.